I'm Brian, and this is AAMI News and Conversation. We're here at day one of the AAMI Exchange in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm here with a very special guest, Rich de la Cruz, who is the winner of our Most Informative Article Award for the AAMI Publications. Rich's article was titled, "The Application of IEC 62304 for AI and Other Technologies. It's not rocket science, it's computer science." And Rich, why don't you tell us who you are?
Rich de la Cruz. I've been developing either on the product development side or working on the quality side, medical devices, and that's both Class 1 and Class 2, SAMD, SIMD type architectures for, I quit counting after about 38 years.
And you were just telling me that you were involved in the development of IEC 62304, the maintenance of that standard, for quite a long time. Is that correct?
Yes, I've been working on that for a number of years and have come quite familiar with it. Worked with Sherman Eagles, who actually was the original writer with one of the FDA guys of the standard. And we talked a lot about the background of 62304. So I had made some assumptions when I saw it. As a computer scientist, it's kind of like, where did this come from? Because you're always wondering the source of a particular document, just like words. Words always go back in time. And when you look at 62304 from a computer science standpoint, it's kind of a 101 on how do I develop software. And when I talked to Sherman, his response was yes, that's exactly what they did, is they looked at some earlier standards that were not medical device, and then based the medical device standard on those with the content or intent of it being sort of a computer science or medical device 101 on how do you produce software.
Yeah, and some of our viewers might be a little confused right now because we're talking about a standard that talks about software, and yet we're saying medical device. So when we're talking about software as a medical device, or is this software in medical devices? You mentioned both.
Well, 62304 is a medical device software standard, and where people get a little confused is it doesn't cover the entire development lifecycle. It covers producing software, but it's assuming that you're starting at a system level as part of a product. So it's back to the days of embedded software development. And that system level is going to pass down certain characteristics and features that the software picks up. And so software itself, 62304, is covering the, if you would, software subsystem level through verification. Validation is part of the system level. And that's part of why 82304, which is more of a SAMD type app, provides the wrapper that calls 62304.
Okay, and SAMD, just for clarity, is software as a medical device.
Yeah,
very good.
The new name.
You mentioned that the standard itself defines the what, but never the how, which I can imagine allows for a lot of flexibility here. Is that important?
It's important in all standards. The difficulty you run into is, for example, if I said, you need to speak clearly and concisely, that can be interpreted a lot of different ways. I could have this type of equipment. If I'm being a singer, I need a whole different mic. You have to define in a standard what they need to do, but allow folks the opportunity to decide how they're going to do it and then defend it.
That does make sense. But that then leads to me to the question, then why is it necessary to highlight how do we take this standard and apply it to AI? It seems to say, if the flexibility is there, what questions remain?
Well, the difficulty is that folks have different levels of understanding of 62304 and reading the standard. And if you look at it through the lens of computer science and how do I both envision or concept a product, start to build the product, how do I release the product, how do I maintain the product, they don't see that. They see the lines of what is clearly defined within the standards, but when you say AI, it doesn't say how to do AI in here.
Right.
I wouldn't expect it to, as if you would, sort of a guide on how do you produce software. AI is just another type of software. You're adding algorithms or deep learning aspects, and you can still utilize the framework and then add in, which as I talked about in the article, add in a section called AI plan. And then within that plan, define how you're going to do it. In particular, how you're going to verify and validate your data in AI when you're training your algorithm or you're working on your deep learning type stuff, which most people aren't doing right now.
I shouldn't admit, when I was reading your article, I felt like I was reading a very well-written, almost more fun version of a technical information report, where I'm learning the new applications, the new questions that I should be asking when I'm considering this standard, but in such a way that I enjoyed reading it, even though it was very technical, it was very informative. How did you get to that approach? How did you learn to write this way?
It's a frustration because in writing standards, you're not allowed to use humor.
Right.
You can't be funny, and I find most things in the world, there's so much irony in everything. I just thought about how would I write this in a way that introduces humor, and using humor in a way that helps more easily explain a particular concept or approach. Because I don't like to read technical articles either. I like to read things and laugh about them, and also it
might want to relate a little bit.
Exactly, it very much helps you relate.
No, that's true. At a certain point, you were mentioning the importance of risk mitigation and understanding biases, and you gave a great example of biases, which was the Lay's classic potato chip anecdote that you had thrown in there. Tell me a little bit about that. What was that about?
Well, one of the interesting things is bias has gotten a bad name. People say, oh, we've got to reduce bias. We've got to get rid of bias. And it's kind of like saying we've got to reduce the air in the room. You can't get rid of bias. It's a basic part of how we look at things. And the Lay's potato chip example is really kind of interesting because I love Lay's potato chips. I'll go to a store and I'll see Lay's, and that's a very positive bias for me. It's a positive bias for the manufacturer of Lay's. It's a negative bias for the folks that produce other chips. And for my wife, it's a neutral bias as long as they don't spill chips on the floor.
Yeah, get whatever chips you want.
Yeah, and so that's an example of a thing that has all three types of biases. So there's also something that I talked about in either that article or another article I've written, which was unconscious bias. So you and I are talking, we don't know each other, we met recently, and as we're talking, pretend that, oh, you talk about this, I talk about that, and suddenly we realize we're related. And your entire worldview shifts on that person.
Yeah, well, we both like potato chips.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, Rich is a great guy. I just realized.
You're in the brotherhood. but that's kind of a key of an unconscious bias. But everything's biased. And in developing with AI, there's been examples of devices where they've trained the AI based on a particular regional location and particular makeup of demographics, and then moved it to another spot, and it didn't work.
Right, of course.
And because they didn't understand the biases. And when I look at AI and bias in particular, the characterization of the data and being able to put it into sort of a structured format that says this data represents this, the requirements and the testing, tuning, and verification of that data can be as much work as developing the software.
Yeah. Predetermined change control programs, PCCPs, is becoming very, very much a hot topic, very exciting. Am I going to be expecting a write-up about that from you in the future?
It's something that could be interesting. I was also thinking about writing an article on the latest FDA changes as it relates to cybersecurity. I've been spending a lot of time in there.
Yeah.
And again, it's an area that people have. I've worked with as a consultant, worked with a lot of manufacturers who are submitting and helped them put together some documentation. And the approaches are as varied as there are manufacturers. And again, it's in a way that's overly complex because, we talked about auditing, I think, a little bit. When you're prepping for an audit, the auditor is just another person that's coming in, and they have different skill sets. And if you can present whatever you've done in a well-defined technical fashion, and if you're an engineer and I'm an engineer and I can defend that from an engineer, computer science or electrical or mechanical, you're good. So most things, people get so convoluted and confused, and it gets overly complicated. And again, I've seen some of these reports, and it's like, oh my goodness, you're trying to read it, and you're having to read 15 different documents.
And it seems like if you take things back to the basics, you kind of reset yourself there.
Well, if you just tell, it's like writing. You're going to tell them what you're going to tell them. You're going to tell them the story, and then you're going to tell them what you told them. And if you can do it in a clear, clean, concise way, then you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can say this is why you won the Most Informative Article Award, because you have that understanding. So congratulations once again. It was a very cool article. So we're right before the expo hall is about to open up. Is there anything for AAMI Exchange this year that you're looking forward to talking about or learning?
I'm always ready to learn. That's the one constant in life is if you're not learning something every day, you're really kind of falling behind. In computer science, in particular, if you're not running to keep up, you're falling behind. And even there, the field has become. When I started, we were still using 96 column cards in college. You drop them on the floor at least once when you're going to the lab.
Everything's out of order suddenly.
It was, yeah. It was quite interesting. But the key thing is that you look at where it started to where it is now and then where it's going to be. There's just a lot of opportunity. And there's just so many different fields. So I've specialized within certain areas because it's very interesting to me. Yeah. And then try to help provide a guide for folks to clear up some of the confusion and give everyone a path forward. It's like one of the standard size, one of the things I wish we could do that I don't understand is we write all these standards, we have these guidances from the agencies, but nobody's put together a standard procedure that meets the guidances, that meets the standards. Because if everybody had a starting point of, hey, here's a standard procedure, an SOP, that you can utilize that complies or conforms with the guidance or standard, how much simpler would it be for everybody to develop? Yet every company has completely different versions of everything.
Yeah. Well, I guess it does come back to that flexibility we were talking about, though. Everybody has their own approach.
It's true, but if again, this goes to audit and audit defense. If you've written a procedure that defines the what and leaves the how a little more flexible, you can even write a procedure that can be utilized by a lot of different folks.
Well, it's food for thought. I hope some of our viewers are thinking about this. Oh, hey, maybe we should start trading information.
Why I got into this field is when you look at the world, there's different avenues you can take. And I look at the medical devices I produced, the medical devices I've oversaw, the AAMI standards that we've worked on. And if you wanted to go out and help one person, you could do that. And I was going to be a doctor at one point, and I got so involved with computer science, I was a corpsman in the military, a medic.
Yeah.
And I decided that I wanted to go the path of medicine. When you look at over the years that I've done this, I haven't helped one person. I haven't helped two people. I've helped millions of people through medical devices and the standards. And when I write the articles, it's the same concept. If I can help clarify and make simpler the approach people can use to achieve the goal of getting out a safe, effective medical device that helps people live better lives, then wow. I mean, that's what drives me.
It's the power of communication.
Yeah.
For sure. That's what AAMI's all about, the sharing of information. And that's why we love articles like yours to help our community better understand things. So thank you again for writing that, and I look forward to reading more of your content in the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I was quite pleased with getting this award.